time zone, we will start with this meeting. I see there's a low attendance right now. I hope it will become larger later because the entire meeting is meant to be a very interactive one and not a passive one. So, but let me start by thanking the ones that they have already joined here and start with the presentation of where we stand with the Food Systems Coordination Hub. After the stock taking moment, we had a number of activities that we undertook, and they actually resulted in a new work plan. So let me drive you through where we stand right now and our new working plan. So somebody to give me a signal that you can see my screen in full screen. Yes, thank you, Sylvia, very much. So I'm going to present to you our new biennial work plan, which is covering the period from April 2024 to March 2026. And I do this as a kind of kickoff, so you have an idea on what we would like to achieve the next 2 years. Let me start, though, with the slide that summarizes what happened in the UN Food System Summit stock-taking moment last July, where we had really a great momentum, as it was affirmed by not only the very big participation in terms of number of delegates, but at the level of participation, more than 120 ministers and more than 20 heads of states or governments that they came there. And it was extremely important that we had an event that it was very, very diverse. And in this event, we had a number of sessions that they were actually informed by a number of preparatory events. We had 5 regional preparatory events on global food system solution dialogues that we have done online. So a message here is that the stock-taking moment in July 2023 was really one that came out of a very inclusive consultative process. And I think that a lot of coalitions also had the chance to future themselves, some of them at really very high level. I mean, we had an entire plenary session on the school meals coalition, but I saw many others being there, either in leadership dialogues or technical sessions, or even in the plenary sessions. So after this, we asked our principals to give us some guidance, and the principals, just to remind, is the heads of FAO, WFP, IFAD, UNDP, DCO, WHO, and the DSG. And we asked them to give us some directions on how we need to plan for the next biennium. And there are 4 very important items. One is that we have to use the call for action that it was issued in the UN Food System Summit stock-taking moment, and also the political declaration, the high-level political forum on sustainable development, to frame our narrative on what we want to do. Also, we have additional elements like the political declaration, the high-level meeting on universal health coverage, a number of resolutions that they passed during October and November 2023, that they have specific references to the Food System Summit and to the stock-taking moment. And of course, a very important milestone, which was the declaration on sustainable agriculture, resilient food systems and climate action that happened during the COP28. So we brought all these things together and we came up with a plan that it was, of course, based, as I said, in the Secretary General call for action, the outcomes, the transitions we have from the SDG Summit, and also a lot of feedback that we received from the food system national conveners and strategic partners. So we end up with what we call 5 coordination clusters. And we want to highlight here the keyword coordination, because the hub is coordinating, is not implementing per se. So we want with these clusters to facilitate a more interconnected articulation of the priority coordination initiatives and to foster a systems approach for the implementation of the work plan, for which we will need partners. Because again, specific technical activities should be done by FAO, by WFP, by IFAD, by UNDP, by WHO, by UNEP, by DCO, but all of them that they support this agenda of food system transformations. And it's extremely important, again, that we do want all this coordination to end up at supporting the implementation of food system pathways at the national, at the country level, and again, without reinventing the wheel, but working with the regional and country level offices of the resident coordinators, the UN country teams, the national ecosystem of support. Let me go a little bit cluster by cluster. On the first one, which is the landing division, I will be presenting for each cluster some big milestones if you want. One big thing is that we want to keep this empowerment to the network of the national conveners, because I do believe that still is the best asset we have taken out of the UN Food Systems Summit. A big milestone will be the organization of the UNFSS +4, which should happen in 2025. Another one very important aspect of this will be the engagement and alignment with global processes, the different COPs, the different conferences that they will happen, and of course to monitor the global process ahead of the next stock-taking moment to understand better how transformation has started happening in terms of concrete activities and even the first results. Then we have the policy and governance cluster, where we do want to coordinate the assistance to the governments implementing pathways. We are building up here from the model that we had during the first 2 years of the work of the hub, where we worked with the UN country teams, many times with the FAWARs or with the WFP directors, that they do have a presence in the country. And we have tried to put the system together, but then leave the agencies in the field to implement. Also, we want to build a country intelligence on how we can track food system transformation progress. This is something that is really asked by our principals, and also to share models and good practices for what it means operationalization of the pathways, and what means operationalization of the pathways taken together, the ecosystem of support, governments, and any other actor. On the science and knowledge cluster, you know that we have established a scientific advisory committee, and we want to support this committee. We do have an initiative which is about empowerment, the next generation leaders, which is focusing on young people from indigenous groups, from women, to drive positive change in food systems. We do want to promote more public learning on key principles and components of food system transformation, but we want, again, not to reinvent the wheel, but to use the intellectual capital that the RBAs and other agencies have, and to facilitate science policy interfaces. On the partnerships, a lot of work here. First of all, with the overall objective to foster stakeholder engagement, specific focuses on the link between ecosystem of support and national conveners. And it's important to understand here the local ecosystem of support, coordination of the UN system, enhanced work with coalitions, and of course, the supporting the integration of food systems in regional development frameworks, which is really a very, I would say, mature level of intervention at the regional level. On finance and investments, a lot of work that it's actually led by our colleagues in IFAD and the World Bank here, continuing to support the countries to track the domestic, public, and international finance on food systems, also to facilitate collaboration between international finance institutions, and also supporting countries in enabling transformative private sector investments for food systems through the costing and the investment plans for the pathways. On all of this, we are following the same governance and coordination we have for the hub. I talked about the oversight steering group. We have at the level of directors also a management consultative group, and the hub will continue to be the team that you know for the last 2 years. Some current updates we have done. We will be able to continue supporting additional dialogues with funding we had from Denmark. I mentioned the youth leadership program, which is funded by the government of Germany, and we have completed the regional level work, and now we go to in-country implementation. IFAD and the World Bank, they are continuing to work on the 3FS tool, the tracking the financial flows. We are starting the implementation of the Convergence Initiative, which is converging the food system and climate action teams and dialogues with support from Netherlands. And also we have started an initiative with a lot of colleagues from the UN system, including a lot of the agencies that are here, of course, FAO, UN Nutrition, WHO, WFP, IFAD, just to mention some of them, but in addition with stakeholders from the private sector, the institutional representatives of the private sector, and the civil society to work on a framework for corporate accountability for food system transformations. We had also a series of regional in-person meetings that we have done, but I will pass one big message from these meetings is that we see the national conveners being more and more mature and strong on supporting their pathways and actually being able to report on what they do. And we need to focus on helping them to have more technical solutions, that they should come from the agencies, from the coalitions, and at the same time engage more with the ecosystem of support. So I'll stop here. I'll stop sharing. Thank you very much for being here, and I give back to Mia to continue the meeting. I will be here the entire time, but I will not be intervening in the discussion, because really this should be a discussion that is facilitated by my colleagues in the hub, but not a discussion where the hub will be taking the lead on speaking. And I will come back just at the last 5 minutes of this meeting with some thoughts. Thank you very much, and over to you, Mia.
Thank you very much, Stefanos, for these introductory remarks. So my name is Mia Madsen, and I'm a policy officer at the Food Systems Hub, and I'm moderating this first session. But before opening the floor for some comments and questions from you, I just wanted to give you some brief information about the objective of today's meeting. So we are very happy to see so many coalitions here. Today's meeting is the first step in a series of engagement meetings that the Hub is planning with the coalitions this year and next year. And the objective of today's meeting is to really have a two-way discussion and conversation about our collective efforts towards food system transformation. And as Stefanos just briefly introduced, we are providing some updates on what has happened since the UNFSS +2. The idea is also for you to share some interesting examples of results that you have achieved, and for us to start planning ahead for the UNFSS +4 in 2025. So we would now like to open up the floor for any questions or reflections from the participants that you might have on this first introductory session. And I kindly ask you to raise the hand if you would like to take the floor, and try to limit your intervention to rather short in the interest of time. But I will open up the floor if there's anybody who wants to comment or say something. The floor is yours now. So I will have a look at the chat here to see if there's anybody who is raising their hands. Okay, so meanwhile, we wait for somebody to take the floor. I would like to give the opportunity to Silvia Ekra, our Deputy Director. Silvia, do you have any additional points that you want to raise at this point following Stefanos' intervention?
Thank you very much, Mia. Hello, greetings to everybody. Really a long time that we haven't had that collective conversation. I think the Hub has been engaged with many of you along the month, and going deeper into some of the collaboration. And you've seen from Stefanos' presentation about the 5 clusters that are going to be the structure that the Hub really uses for the work in the next biennium. That partnership and collaboration is extremely important, and it is partnership within the UN, partnership with the national conveners, but also partnership within the ecosystem of support. And one of the things that was put as extremely important in the call to action from the Secretary General at the end of the stock-taking moment was really, how do we optimize the ecosystem of support? How do we make sure that we are working tighter and stronger together to support the national conveners and the implementation of the national pathways? So it would be very interesting for us to hear also your thoughts about the work plan of the Hub. where you see alignment. Some of you we have had discussions with to think about what could be 2-3 deliverables that we could be working on together. Emily is here. We've had that conversation with the HDP Nexus when it comes to fragility and fragile context. What are the things that the hub could do that brings value addition to what the coalition is doing? And this is the kind of conversations that we would want to have with many of you. But as a collective, we would also want to discuss how we optimize the work that coalitions are doing and how do we create a platform for stronger engagement and collaboration. So please do feel free. This is really meant to be an interactive conversation. All thoughts are welcome. Feel free to react on the work plan of the hub, on what you see that you like, on what you see that you think you would like to contribute more specifically to. What are the alignments with your own work plans? This is really meant to be a working session. So stopping there for now, Mia, hoping that colleagues come in. There will be lots of opportunities to react to many things along the way and to even some coalitions sharing examples as food for thought. But this is really meant to be a working session where we are deciding how we want to take our collaboration to the next level until UNFSS +4, but of course, well beyond that. Over back to you, Mia.
Thank you so much, Sylvia. So I am looking in the participant list and I do not see, okay, yes, we have a speaker here. So I will give the floor to Barbara from the Sun Movement, is it? Yes.
Yes.
The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And apologies, I didn't mean to take the floor so soon, but here I am. No, I was wondering in terms of alignment, because I'm from the nutrition community, so to speak, and we are all very mobilized at the moment towards the Nutrition for Growth Summit, which will take place in March 2025. So I'm just wondering in terms of alignment, if you had planned to sort of leverage the N4G Summit, because it will have a food systems work stream. If you had planned to leverage this towards the UNFSS +4, and how we can best use the synergies on the road to N4G and then to UNFSS, a little bit on the model that we did that in 2021, calling it the year of nutrition action, and we really used the momentum between the UNFSS and the N4G Summit. In 2025, it will be reverse. I think it will be N4G first and then UNFSS +4, but it's still an opportunity to create a good dynamic and use synergies. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. I do not see any other hands raised at the moment, so I think that maybe I'll give back the floor to Sylvia or Stefanos if you would like to react on the question from Barbara.
Sure, happy to respond to Barbara's very good point, and encouraging colleagues to get ready to take the floor or ask questions in the chat. That also is more than fine. And I think we should be around 12 coalitions from my tally here, although I stopped at some point counting, but I think we are around 12. That's quite a good number. That's approximately the number of coalitions that have responded to the survey. But let's see how many others come. So to your point, Barbara, about nutrition for growth, in the Secretary General call to action, to go back to that and see how in the mind of the leadership of the UN, all the things are articulated. In the call to action, there were a few areas that were highlighted as priority for the next biennium, and nutrition was one of them. In our work plan, we have nutrition for growth and other global milestones as moments that we need to leverage to make sure that the convergence of the different agendas continues to be done. So converging climate agenda with the climate action agenda with food systems, but also nutrition, fragility, resilience. These are all areas that we consider to be important to be bringing our collective advocacy, but also bringing the implementation at the country level together. So when it comes to nutrition for growth, we've already had some conversations with the French organizers, but most importantly, we had a discussion with UN Nutrition and with the different RBAs on how we're going to work on this together. We know that Francesco from WHO is going to be one of the people that are going to have the capacity to be the liaison as directly interacting on the substance of the meeting and as being one of the core agencies supporting the hub. Yesterday, we had a very interesting meeting, which was about the Sun Movement Global Gathering, and Breer from the Nutrition for Growth was there. The connections are being made. I was invited to co-chair one of the thematic groups of the Global Gathering, the one on climate change and food systems. And we are trying by having this direct engagement and all being involved in the structures and the governance, making sure that it is a continuum. So from the Global Gathering to the Nutrition for Growth to UNFSS +4, we're trying to make sure that it's a seamless continuum of really pushing this convergence of the nutrition, climate, and food systems agenda, and that as much as we want to work in an integrated way, we also do not lose the essence of discussing specific topics. And I think for me, this is also what we want to discuss with you towards the end of the meeting, is what are the priorities of what we're going to elevate at UNFSS +4, and how do we ground those things in the different milestones that are going to happen along the way, including COP29, including COP30. So, Barbara, I hope that answers your question. The strategic anchoring of food systems and nutrition over these different events is well underway, let's say. But looking forward to more suggestions and ideas around that. Stefanos, you wanted to also come in on this question from Barbara?
No, Sylvia, I think you have covered the subject. I don't want to add something. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And on my count of coalitions, I think we should be 13 now. Any other questions, comments on the work plan, on activities that we have had in the recent past? Emily.
Hi. So just also similar to Barbara's comments, I think it would be interesting to start discussing also how the STM is going to be linked to the 2025 session of the CFS, which is also around the theme is going to be around building resilient food systems. So I think it's particularly relevant to my coalition and to know a lot of other coalition as well. So it would be, and they will be in short succession as well. So I think it would be interesting to see how we build alignment between those different engagements. I also wanted to thank the Hub, because I think this is a very good meeting, and I hope this is the beginning of more engagement across and within the coalitions. From the perspective of the Nexus Coalition, we have been really keen to work more closely with other coalition, and it's been working a lot around advocacy, but perhaps less around the work that we're doing at country level. So we would be keen to discuss this with colleagues. And also, I don't know if we're going to have time today, but it would be also interesting to hear from the Hub as well, in terms of where on your work plan, where do you see the potential contribution or potential alignment with the coalition as well, because some of us have already had a lot of work done in terms of our planning through the different mechanisms that we have as coalitions. And it would be interesting to perhaps take some time to really align and make sure that we are we also all pushing in the same direction, but we also like not duplicating and not creating gaps. So thank you.
Sylvia, we have a few questions. I see that Oliver from the Agroecology Coalition has asked the floor, and there's also a question in the chat box. So maybe I give the floor. You will have a lot of opportunities to engage. So if I give the floor now to Oliver, and then we take the question the chat box, and then we will move, I think, forward to responding to some of the questions and then moving towards the next sections of the meeting. So Oliver, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mia, and thanks. Hi, everyone. Just a quick question given the succession of key global events that is taking place. We know that in September this year, we will have the Summit of the Future. So I was just wondering how is the food systems transformation is being positioned or positioning with regard to this major event also happening in New York in September this year. Over.
Thank you, Oliver. Sylvia,
I can get this on if you want,
yeah,
or if
Sylvia and Stefanos.
Right.
So maybe Stefanos, if you don't mind, I see one hand from Samira.
Oh yes,
and,
sorry, yeah.
And then Mia, if you can read the question that is in the chat, because I think it's fairly long.
Yeah.
Maybe you just read the question, the portion that is the question, and then after that we'll go back to Stefanos on CFS, on Summit of the Future, etc.
Okay,
Samira.
so first Samira.
Okay, thank you very much, Sylvia. Thanks, everybody. Good to be here and to have this getting together of the coalitions and from the Resilient Local Food Supply Chains Alliance. And it was also very good to have the survey, which gave us a chance to be able to say what it is that we've been doing, because sometimes it feels as if we are a little bit of a way away from the hub. For a couple of questions, which I did put at the end, was that with regard to the coalitions, and that there are a few of them that I think that we should be working with to avoid duplication. And so that brings me on to the question is, how would the hub try to bring us together to maybe interact, to see how we can work in the country? Because our coalition is member-led and our countries have asked us for specific areas, specific requests. One of those, we're going to be linking up with HDP Nexus. And also for others, we might think of School Meals Coalition, although the School Meals Coalition is not necessarily one of the UNFSS coalition, although it is a big coalition. So for local food supply chains, it is a quite specific area that our member states would like some support with. And in fact, in terms of bringing that, at the stock-taking moment, in terms of advocacy, we now have the government of Italy, who is very much interested in our coalition and taking that and leveraging that with advocacy at a global level. So I just want to know how the hub would work with us, to bring the coalitions together so that we can interact and work together to be stronger and be better to direct support to our country partners, but also in terms of the advocacy that we have a strategy now, a draft strategy, and a activity and outcome matrix in terms of where we would want to go, to see how we can get any support with that. Over. Sorry, that was a very long thing, but I think there were two questions in there, Sylvia. I know you were noting that. Thank you.
Sylvia and Stefanos, would you like to respond to the questions we have received so far, and then we take the last two ones in the chat?
Sorry, I managed to get my...
Mia, I think the questions in the chat are a little bit linked, no? Because
Okay.
they're linked to connecting to support the national pathways, and also the presence of thematic areas that are important for coalitions in the national pathways. So maybe you just read them quickly, and then we'll answer everything and finish with this round of questions and move on to the next agenda item.
Let's do so. So we have a question in the chat box from Kirstin De Value from the Forest and Food System Coalition. She's interested in understanding how the hub and other coalitions, as well as countries, are engaging around nature-positive production, And also an additional question related to that is she would like to understand more about the approach of the Convergence Initiative and how to engage both within the context of the coalitions and beyond. And there is a question linked here from Molly Brennan, who would like to understand if there will be opportunities to connect the coalitions with member states to support on their national pathways. So those are the two questions that we have in the chat, and I will hand back to Sylvia and Stefanos for some responses.
Stefanos, please.
Thanks, Sylvia. So let me try to give one answer for all with separate components. Yeah? I'll start by the question how the hub will engage with coalitions, which is very much related to the opportunities to connect coalition with member states. So colleagues, this is why we do this meeting today. And it's going to be a kickoff of a process where we need to understand how we can engage better together. The last 2 years, and every time I've met with coalitions, I have faced a similar question, how we can engage better and how the coalitions can support member states to implement their pathways. And I have the same answer every time. And the answer is the coalitions should give specific ideas and tools on what we can offer to the national conveners. We cannot do a one-to-one connection. It's not what we want to do, but we do want to have an offer from the coalitions to the conveners for the implementation of their pathways. If we don't establish this portfolio of offer, this you can call it this toolkit, the toolbox, but it should be a collection of very tangible things that the coalition can support. We cannot talk about an engagement. We can talk about meetings and meetings and meetings, but not about engagement. We made an effort about 18 months ago to create this portfolio, but I have to tell you what we received from coalitions was not what constitutes a portfolio of products and services for the conveners. It was a description of wishes. So we want to do this again because we understand now that many coalitions have reached a level of maturity that they have tools to offer at the national level. And we do want to be this broker, but we need really to understand what the coalitions are offering. If we don't understand this, we cannot go to the conveners and say, yes, there's going to be support from coalitions. What kind of support? This will bring me to the question of my very good colleague from the forestry division. As a forester myself, I really think that the point you put there, the nature positive production, is extremely important. But the hub is not here to look at specific technical areas, being food loss and waste, being the right to food. This is what we expect from the coalitions to let us know how they will be embedded in the work that the conveners are doing. So I'm really expressing an agony here that it's not about a theoretical framework on how we will engage, but on practice, how we can all of us support the conveners. And for me, this is the centrality of the engagement. Let me go to the Oliver question on the Summit for the Future. So Oliver, I don't know how close you are with the process, but right now there's a version of the Pact for the Future, which for me, it has the best gift that can ever happen to our community, the Community of Food Systems Summit. And it says that the member states, they do agree to transform their food systems. And for me, if this language will remain there and it will be taken out of the Summit for the Future, it's the biggest gift we can have, because we will have in an official negotiated UN document the word of food system transformations, which, as you know, until now is debated and it's challenged by many member states. And for me, if you have any links with governments, with negotiators, that they will go to the Summit of the Future, please ask them to keep this specific reference, this specific paragraph on the food systems. I mean, I don't really think we need to push for anything else. This is more than enough. we get this and we forget that we need another intergovernmentally negotiated document, but we need to keep the text because we're not sure if the text will be there. As a reference, this is this is paragraph 6D of action 4 of chapter 1 of the Pact of the Future as per the draft of the 14th of May. And it says that we agree to fundamentally transform our food systems for the benefit of the people, planet, and prosperity, so that everyone has access to safe, affordable, nutritious food, addressing the drivers of food insecurity and promoting resilient and sustainable agriculture. Can we get this language? It's a big win. The hub is not engaged in the food systems, in the Summit of the Future in an official way, because this is a very much member state driven agenda. The UN agencies have submitted comments up to a certain point, and the negotiation right now is only between the member states. And I can tell you, Oliver and colleagues, that even the UN agencies have been asked to not to be present in the room when the member states negotiate. Over.
Thank you, Stefanos. You want to say something about CFS and opportunities?
Yes, so with the CFS, correct. With the CFS, we have started, a very positive collaboration. We will do a side event together in the HLPF. We do want actually to co-organize with the CFS a briefing for the UN resident coordinators to showcase the tools of the CFS. Depending on when and where the next stock-taking moment is going to take place, of course, we will see possibilities of coordination, but I think it's a little bit premature to let you know now how this will happen, because we need a decision from our principals on the venue and the dates and the subject of the next stock-taking moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stefanos. So covering quickly some of the other questions. First of all, I think a lot of the things that you are raising about how do we connect together with the coalitions, how will we work together for the country level, all of this is really the reason why we wanted to have this meeting. And you will see, and Tambani will shortly present on the results of the survey. A lot came out of it. Extremely interesting insight that we got thanks to you. And this will also determine how we want to establish a new rhythm for our engagements and what is the best way of keeping this community alive and really optimizing the interaction. So stay tuned for the conversation in the next segment. On the work plan, I don't know if a colleague could put in the chat the link to the new work plan. I would really encourage you to go and look at it very carefully. So the collaboration with the ecosystem of support and efforts to optimize the ecosystem of support is in the cluster on partnerships and collaboration. And that's where we are anchoring the engagement with the coalitions. But what we want to do together with the coalitions is throughout the 5 clusters. So do have a look, come back to us, tell us areas where you think you see a collaboration with the hub on specific elements, and we would be very happy to agree on 2, 3, 1, 2 deliverables for the stocktake and beyond. For example, just to give you an example, at the moment we have launched, I think many of you have heard this, the first funding round of the new food systems window of the joint SDG funds. And we are trying to make sure that coalitions have a very important role to play in the review of the proposals, in the support to the UN country teams that are implementing projects. So this is really making sure that this asset of the summit is fully leveraged and fully used as one element of advancing this agenda. On the question about nature positive or other thematic areas in the national pathways, I think there as well, we are seeing, and we had the same conversation with our colleagues on the nutrition front, national pathways have matured, national conveners have a much better understanding of what the role is, what are the difficulties of leading systems work. And I think this is a time, without, of course, creating pressure on the national conveners or on the countries, but this is the time where we can come back with renewed engagement to further polish and improve the national pathways in areas where they've even been glossing on certain areas, just paying lip service to certain areas. The time is really ripe that we can come back and say, can we look at this particular aspect and do it in a very smart way? Not all countries have the same priorities, and a smart entry point may not be the same for different countries, but where we see that there is an appetite, can we quickly, in a coordinated way, be together in offering that technical support to countries? And I know that the Blue Food Coalition, I know that the Agroecology Coalition, they've been providing this very specific support, Healthy Diet as well, technical support on national pathways, on investment strategies, on sector strategies. So it is happening, and that's also the kind of experience that we want to share through this meeting. And the gateway, I saw your question, Samira, are we going to do the survey again on the offers? Yes, we want to make sure now that all of us have had time to really take greater possession of, what are the challenges, what are the constraints, how do we offer integrated support to national conveners in a way that reduces transaction costs. We want to come back to this question of the gateway and make it a very light but still effective marketplace where we can match needs and demands of national conveners with offers from the coalitions. But that has to come with a commitment, right? It cannot be that a convener is placing a demand through the gateway and that it remains unresponded to for months, right? That would be a problem with the credibility of the tool. So we will come back very shortly to you. Tembani is our focal point for that. We will be coming back to you on the gateway, and I think this time it's really going to be different because a lot of things have evolved. Mia is going to be your new focal point for anything coalitions. So also when you have this interest in partnering for key events, inviting us to events or joining forces to organize events, Mia is your go-to person, and from now on you really have an interface within the hub to be liaising and making sure that we don't have a drop in communication anymore. As you all know, we initially had Lina, then we lost Lina, then we had someone from WHO, didn't help, but this is just the beginning of the conversation. And I think I've spoken far too much. I will put something in the chat on the convergence so that I don't take more time on online for now. So Mia, I'm handing over back to you, and we'll try to check online if there's anything. I'll try to respond online so that we continue with the program. Over.
Thank you so much, Sylvia. And I'm really happy to see that there has been a lot of interactive discussion here, and we'll continue that, of course, throughout this session today. And I'm looking forward to working more closely together with you all in the coming months. And so with this, I'm going to close this first session, and we will be moving into the next session where we will hear the preliminary results of the online survey that we shared with you. And there will also be some presentations from 2 selected coalitions of action who will share some insights in how they have worked in supporting countries at country level, really. So I will hand over to my colleague Tembani Malapela, who is the Knowledge Management Officer from the Hub. And the floor is yours, Tembani.
Thank you, Mia. Can you confirm that you can all see my slide?
Yes, we can see it.
Good. Thank you so much. And thank you very much. I think the prior discussion has actually put a very good context to this presentation, and also to hear your questions, which some of them you addressed in the survey. So the survey very much speaks into the objectives of this meeting too, because we would like to understand the progress that has been made by coalitions since the UNFSS +2. We want to understand the experiences, your lessons learned, and the successful practices that you have had while working at a country level for the food systems transformation. We also want to strengthen the coordination and collaboration between the hub and also within the coalitions themselves. And then we hope that these inputs of yours that you send to us will help us to make a sort of a foundation and discussions also towards a shared vision to UNFSS +4. Really, so this survey for us was a tool that will help us to get information from you, and we hope that the results itself will also make us be aligned towards the future. At the end of the day yesterday, we had received 11 out of the 29 coalitions had filled this survey, and we are very happy about that. This morning, we just received an additional one, so 12 submissions that we have received up to today, but the analysis shows those that we received by end of the day. And we're very happy and pleased that you managed to fill this. One of the things that was important in the survey, which I will highlight, was the fact that we tried to make sure that we will talk to your colleagues when you complete the survey, which is very, very good. When we look at the survey, you had more than 20, 25 discussions amongst yourselves. So it was not only the person completing the survey, but they were busy. You were talking to each other. You shared with us your work plans, your strategic documents. We have received over 45 documents, so which means we will have also to read through these documents and understand what is in them. This will help us also to frame the alignments that you have mentioned, and also to understand also in your own strategic focus, how do you support your countries, and also how we can align this within the work of the national conveners. So straight into the results. I'm not going to go question by question, but I'm going to highlight the meaty part that I think will help us in this discussion. We wanted to understand the governing mechanisms and modalities of joining the coalitions. Briefly, I can say two groups: the coalitions of the willings, and also maybe formalized structures for the coalitions. For coalitions of the willing, meaning open participation, where free member joining, and then the others are really maybe have very much formalized structures that allow working groups and steering committees. Most coalitions show some inclusive membership and emphasis on multi-stakeholder approaches. This was also very good. We received a whole lot of numbers and countries that are your members. We're going to map this and understand in a map around about where do all these coalitions operate. This is going to be very interesting. I think we're looking forward to the report. We saw that some coalitions really have a formal commitment, and they really require declarations to be signed. Interesting enough, that was very nice for us, is the alignment with the existing frameworks. Some coalitions really are linking into food systems national pathway, which was very, very good for us. We asked coalitions, what are the 3 achievements that you have had so far? It was interesting. So when we analyzed those 3 by 11 achievements, the 8 areas came up, which you see here, list from 1 to 8. I'm not going to read all of them, but I'm going to highlight for sure policy influence, multi-stakeholder collaboration, regional and country level engagement. For example, I used an example. What does this mean? If you were to explore more in detail on knowledge sharing and capacity building, you will see that, for example, 3 coalitions emphasize different aspects of this part, where the agroecology coalition talks about raising awareness and facilitating knowledge exchange on agroecology. The Resilient Local Food Supply Chains Alliance talks of webinar series and dialogues for knowledge exchange. What were the key challenges that you highlighted in your work? First, obviously, is funding, and this is much more expected. Most coalitions reported difficulties in securing funding for the activities. You mentioned engagement with national conveners, which is much more dear to us. So coalitions struggle to establish a consistent communication and collaboration with national food systems conveners. Translating global commitments to local actions. This is again another on the implementation of the national pathways and the commitment. You talked of measuring impact. This is also a global, we see it mostly in different stakeholders we work with. You need for a better M&E systems to track progress and impact of coalitions. And then obviously this one, you have already raised it even before, coordination amongst coalitions. What are the priorities for your work, for future work? You told us that your priorities are to strengthen country level support and focus on implementations. This is very dear to us. Addressing emerging challenges such as global issues, climate change, conflicts, and economic crisis into the coalition's work. Enhanced cross-coalition collaboration is coming up again, and also cross-cutting issues such as data, monitoring, funding, and elevate our role in the global processes. And I was happy also you mentioned many global processes in your questions at the beginning of this discussion. We asked you how do you see the role of the national conveners? It was very interesting. I have 4 points in my slide. You really see national conveners on a high level, effective to get that high level of government support in prime minister's or president office. We're so happy to hear this, because this is really how national conveners should be positioned. Your facilitation of stakeholder engagement, national conveners should be the go-to, and you really see them as that convening, facilitating stakeholder engagement. You mentioned that also national conveners, the need for support. There's an indication that some national conveners often require support to operationalize their food systems pathways effectively, to build capacity and resources for national conveners. And this is where we also think that the gateway will be a very good technical support for national conveners. The bridge between global and local is still also came up in your answers. So what were the key learnings related to inter-coalition collaboration? There is limited collaboration and varied levels of engagement. You mentioned that despite the interconnected nature of food systems issues, there appears to be limited systematic collaboration between coalitions at a country level. So this is an untapped potential. So what we did in the questionnaire, we asked whom you are collaborating with and asked you to upload this information selectively. What we are going to do, you are going to mind map these results to show who is collaborating on who, on which country, on which thematic areas. We hope in the final report, this will allow you to see existing collaborations and to tap into potential synergies that are there. There was a desire for more structured interaction and facilitation. You asked us to have regular touchpoint meetings. Information sharing platforms came really higher up, including physical meeting. We were surprised. This was something that you asked, and this is going to be an input that we are going to also evaluate, as we are going to see later as we move in the survey. You also called for potential for joint advocacy. This is something that was interesting that came out in your analysis. So how can the hub better encourage inter-coalition collaboration? You talked of platforms, we share contact information, facilitate, support channels of engagement. So these are the calls that you are making to the hub to facilitate your work. So what are the key conclusions and learnings that the survey reinforced? Basically, in summary, you said coalitions are of value to the food systems transformation. Value in one, convening power. You have the power to bring together diverse stakeholders, including governments, NGO, private sector, research institutions, and bring that multicultural or multi-sectoral collaborations. Amplifying the voices. You said that you can be a platform to represent the underrepresented groups, youth, women, countries from the global south, to participate in global discussion. So if all the 29 coalitions operating in global, you could bring all these forces together. And this resonates very well with SG call for action for inclusivity. You also mentioned the technical expertise. We learned that coalitions offer very specialized knowledge and support to countries in implementing food systems transformation strategies. We were happy to hear this from you, and we think that the gateway that we are really planning should then cut those technical expertise, mapping them to national conveners and countries. You mentioned resource mobilization. So some coalitions have been very successful in attracting funding and resources for their focus areas. Maybe leveraging on these could be an asset for the food system transformation landscape. And policy influence. By coordinating advocacy, coalitions have influenced global policy and discussions and outcomes in various formats. So this is the end of the high level of the survey. There are still some who are still asking to provide more information. Please do so. We hope the whole report will really deep provide these knowledge that we have and these insights, and help as a basis for us also as a midterm for the next next stock-taking moment. Thank you so much, and I will stop here. There's 2 more slides that we will share later, but these will be reflections that will come in within the discussion to the roadmap to the UNFSS +4. Over to you, Mia.
Okay, thank you. So now is actually, let me see here. Now we will give the floor to 2 coalitions to present some of their key results. The moderator for this session will be Denise. So Denise, I will actually hand over the floor to you to introduce the 2 coalition presenters, and then yeah, you take it from there. Over.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mia. And my name is Denise Coitinho. I am from the UN Nutrition Secretariat, and I will moderate this session now. You've seen very interesting results from the survey. There's much, much more. The hub will make the results available, but mostly the hub will look at these results very carefully to be able to support the coalitions very effectively. And to start this, let's get more some more in-depth insights from some coalitions. We will hear 2 coalitions, and then I'll open the floor for other coalitions to provide their insights as well. So we will start with Oliver Oliveiros from the agroecology. Oliver, you have the floor. You have 7 minutes. And we ask you to really focus on what the achievements, challenges, and the suggestions for this ecosystem of support to be working more closely together, supporting countries. Over to you, Oliver.
Thanks very much, Denise, and good afternoon, good evening, good morning again, everyone. Next slide, please. So the Agroecology Coalition is a coalition that was launched 2 years ago during UNFSS, and our mandate is really to promote food systems transformation with agroecology as a pathway, and building on 2 globally accepted work already by the HLPE's, CFS of HLPE and FAO's 10 elements of agroecology. We're working on 5 areas: knowledge, markets, investments, policies, and one that is more inward-looking, which is around membership engagement as a coalition. You would see on half part of the screen how we are structured with members, with a steering committee, with a working group supported by a 3.5-person secretariat. Next slide. Here you would see the membership of the coalition, which has grown by 60% since our creation in 2 years ago, with 50 of almost 300 members coming from member states, mostly ministries of agriculture, but not only. Next slide. You would see here, it's just a sort of some examples in terms of the activities that are carried out by the coalition at the in-country and regional level. So we're looking at facilitating peer-to-peer learning, supporting the work of our members in supporting countries in developing their national agroecology policy or strategy, supporting also the emergence of agroecology and food systems transformation agenda in Southeast Asia, and also facilitating exchange of experiences across different continents. So for instance, in Arusha a few weeks ago, we convened cross-learning between East African countries with Brazil, with India, and US Midwest, and combining it with a discussion with donors to be able to really push them and facilitate their, raising their awareness to really support food systems transformation through agroecology. Next slide. Some other examples here at the global level, we're really building on policy dialogue and different policy processes, convenings in Rome. We're building on substa process within a COP, but we're also linking with other agenda, like on sustainable water management, on agrobiodiversity, on the 3 Rio conventions, but not only. Next slide. And some concrete tools or examples that came out of this 2-year process, we developed an agroecology finance assessment tool. For example, it allows donors to assess the extent by which portfolio of projects are actually responding to the principles of agroecology. It is also designed to be able to track the level of investments in agroecology. There is a manual, a framework, or a guide that will help countries, but also civil society groups and other stakeholders who would want to develop their agroecology project or respond to calls for proposals on agroecology. We have developed within our working group on policy a policy tracking tool to the extent by which countries are integrating or implementing policy recommendations by CFS that is related to agroecology. We work with partner organizations, also member organizations like WWF, BioVision Foundation, Global Alliance for the Future of Food, in contributing to a Food Forward initiative that is able to really integrate food systems perspectives in the nationally determined contributions of different countries. Then there's one chapter there on using the principles of agroecology insofar as pushing for food systems governance. How does that look like? And building on the agrobiodiversity and biodiversity conversations, we've developed together with partners some policy documents, policy suggestions on how to better integrate food systems and agroecology in national biodiversity strategies of different countries. And then one more example here is a document that takes into account or tracks the various lessons learned and country experiences, particularly in East Africa, in developing their own national agroecology strategies. Next slide. In terms of engagement process, the coalition has we have our different national focal points and different organizational focal points. So we tap these national focal points to work with them in various activities that we do. We link them with the members of the organizations. Many of the country focal points are from agriculture ministers. So we work with them, and sometimes our member organizations who have a closer entry point to these government agencies are the ones that we tap to allow us to open the door and enter into discussions with them. So we work with them to better facilitate conversations with government entities. But in some cases, it is also the member organizations of the coalition who have better access to information on the ground, and their partners would have a better access to government entities that we are targeting to work with. So we're really trying to work with them and really facilitate coordination and communications across. In terms of the most significant change that we have seen following in-country support and provided, I think the really important is not to start from scratch. So once we identified what members are already doing, so really build on that. And the very fact, for instance, that agroecology is now being promoted in national pathways by governments, both in the North and in the South, is a testament that the time for agroecology as an approach to food systems transformation has arrived. East African countries have developed or developing their respective agroecology strategy. Countries in Southeast Asia and in Americas also doing the same, and they're launching their strategies this year. We have members from civil society organizations who were very critical of the coalition and of the UNFSS process, which have joined the coalition, and we are also discussing with some others currently. There is an increasing national interest on agroecology, which is in turn exciting donors, the donor community as well. Until a few years ago, agroecology constituted a very small portion of official development assistance, but we are seeing a lot of donors are increasingly having dedicated envelopes for agroecology. So IFAD, the European Commission, the philanthropic sector, but not only. Of course, we are yet to see whether this trend will continue and will further improve in the future. But the donors who are present in the convenings that we've organized together with members, actors on the ground, have shown a high degree of interest to coordinate their efforts amongst themselves in support of agroecology and deep regenerative approaches in Tanzania, East Africa, and beyond. Of course, I'm not saying that this is all only due to the work of the coalition. Far from it. It is really building on the global momentum on agroecology, which would like to think somehow the coalition was able to contribute. And if our membership growth is of any indicator, 60% growth is not bad after 2 years, and that continues every week. The next slide.
Oliver, can you come to the end? Because
yes, the next slide is exactly on
want to have time
part.
to give the floor to other coalitions.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next slide is an articulation of how we try to play our role as a coalition, as a part of the UN Food System Summit ecosystem of support. So as a coalition, we have this different role, from networking to transferring lessons and best practices, serving as a go-between from local to global. And we try to do that role given the different functions that we have within the coalition. So with the different challenges that we have designed our 5-year strategy, and we'd like to invite you to be part of the launch, which will take place on Thursday this week. Over to you, Denise.
Thank you. Thank you so much. You definitely have gone a long way, and it's incredible progress. And I think that the colleagues will agree with me that we can already identify many points for cross collaboration among the coalitions. So with this, I will ask Emily Chazelle from the HDP Nexus Coalition to present some insights as well. Emily, you have maximum 7 minutes, please. And I'll ask you really to stick to this time because we want to hear from others.
Sure. So thank you, Mia.
Thank you so much.
So I will start with just a very, very brief overview. Next slide of the coalition, just to situate it a little bit. So we are hosted by the Global Network Against Food Crisis, and we were formed as a result of the acknowledgement that during the discussions of the Food System Summit in 2021, peace and conflicts were largely absent from the discussions, despite conflict being one of the biggest driver of food insecurity worldwide, as it's been shown in the global report on food crisis year after year. So our leadership, the G7+, which is an intergovernmental organization of countries affected by conflict, CIPRI, FAO, and WFP came together and decided to form this coalition. And we're really trying to see how the focus is really to bring about the transformation of food system in countries affected by food crisis and fragility. Next, please. So what we articulate our work through 3 dimensions. One is to support the implementation of food system pathways in fragile context. So that's really around leveraging our membership to ensure that we are supporting nationally led processes. The second dimension is around advocating for a strong focus on peace and conflict in global food system dialogues. So we have played an important role in promoting the inclusion of the challenges that are facing countries affected by conflict and crisis in global discussions. And we make sure that these challenges are carried and voiced by the people who are actually affected by those challenges. And finally, we also try to promote a common understanding of the interlinked drivers on food crisis. So looking at the interlinkages between conflict and hunger, but also and famine, for instance, but also like how this is further amplified by climate crisis and by social and economic drivers as well. Next slide. So I wanted to focus this presentation on some of the work that we have been doing at country level, particularly in East Africa. And I wanted to start with our principles of engaging at country level, either in Sudan, where unfortunately the process has stalled after the beginning of the war in 2023, in Somalia and in Ethiopia. So we have 4 principles, basically. One is that there has to be a country demand. So in each of those countries, we were requested by the national conveners who are representing their countries on the coalition for specific and tailored support. So, for instance, in a country like Sudan, prior to the crisis, their requests for support were slightly different from what we have seen coming out of Somalia and Ethiopia, albeit we can see a lot of similar bottlenecks. The demands and the support has to be tailored and to what is requested by the countries. We also make sure that there is regional leadership for the work that we are engaging in. So in the context of East Africa, IGAD has been very much in the driving seat, and we are building our country work around the regional framework that was signed at ministerial level in October 2022 around supporting the food system pathways along an HDP approach. The third point is around partnership. So as a coalition, we have a lot of members. We have about 65 members. but we don't necessarily have a lot of capacity to operate by ourselves, and neither would we want to operate by ourselves. We don't perceive ourselves as a silo. So this is why we have been partnering very closely with the Global Network Against Food Crisis, but also with the Hub. So the Hub has joined us on the field mission that we've done in Sudan, and more recently, about a month ago, in Ethiopia. And finally, one of the very strong principle is to really understand the local context to support the operationalization of the pathways. So what we have seen from all of these countries is that they have the plans. A lot of them have done a lot of work on the governance for the pathways. But where they are really struggling is to move from plan to action, is to really mobilize all the resources and the actors that are in countries, including the UN, NGOs, and the various ministries that are involved in the food system pathways, to turn those plans into reality. So for instance, in Somalia, what we have been doing is to really work with the government and with the stakeholders through a multi-stakeholder workshop to turn those plans into collective outcomes that they would try to reach by 2027, to really quantify them and specify them so that all of the actors are working towards in the same direction. Next slide, please. So I wanted to just put some lessons from the process that we had in Somalia. So in Somalia, we had two missions. One was a scoping mission, which was really around the analysis of the bottleneck, and again around the implementation of the food system pathways. And the main bottlenecks that came up were around coordination. Too much coordination kind of kills coordination in a sense. There were like a plethora of coordinating mechanisms that were not coordinating amongst each other. So that was a big issue. Around planning, because again, like from a policy perspective, a lot of the sectoral policies were developed as sectoral policies, and now there is a little bit of analysis to be done around what are those policies that are contributing to the pathways and what are the ones that are not contributing to the pathways and would need to be adapted. Data management for food system transformation is a huge issue. That was also the case in Ethiopia. Data is split all across stakeholders, and it's really a very big issue in terms of knowing where to put the emphasis for the government. And financing, making sure that we have the right level of financing and the right type of financing. Somalia has a lot of humanitarian financing, but humanitarian financing is not the type of financing that you need for food system transformation, which would take 5-10 years investment. The second lessons that we had is around the importance in those countries to program along an HDP nexus approach. In Somalia, for instance, in the risk analysis that we did, all of the actors agreed that climate and conflict were the biggest drivers, the biggest risk for their programming around food system. Yet none of those programs were actually addressing those issues. So you had this kind of disconnect between the understanding of what were the risk to the investment that were already happening and what the actors felt they could do in terms of managing those risks, which obviously is a huge issue when you want to look at the effectiveness of the investment in the long term. What came out also from Somalia and from Ethiopia were very concrete asks in terms of mobilizing resources. And by resources, I don't necessarily mean financial resources. There's a lot of technical resources, a lot of capacity that they would like to do. And one of the response that we are putting in place is through the global network, mobilizing a specific resource to place in the regional resident coordinator office to support specifically the food system operationalization. So there will be one person that will be dedicated within the RC office to support the government in terms of the operationalization of their pathways and to bring together the UNCT along. One of the main challenges that we have found was around the delivering of coordinated support. Our coalition is one of the coalition which is more like an open coalition, and is not necessarily set up as a very clear delivery mechanism, because we have a lot of people that are very interested in understanding more around the HDP nexus and food system. But in terms of tapping into this expertise, understanding that everyone is constrained for fundings, and delivering fast response. And I come back to the point of Sylvia earlier in terms of when the national conveners are asking for something, you don't want to be answering their request 2 years down the track. That is still something that we need to be working on more closely. And finally, I come back again on the partnership. I mean, it's really essential for us. The UNFSS hub and the global network have been essential partners. But one of the reasons I'm very glad to be here is because we really want to have more outreach to other coalitions to see how we can pull expertise and capacity together. Final slide, Mia. So just some forward-looking reflections, perhaps also to hear back from you. Like, so we have launched a process in Somalia and in Ethiopia. We'll have to do the follow-up, and we're going to launch this process again in South Sudan, still along with the global network and the UNFSS hub. One of the issues that we really need to grapple with is to rethink how to address the request for support and what is the most appropriate delivery mechanism for this support. Another aspect that we as a coalition feel like we are better placed to focus on is the peer-to-peer learning. So for instance, tomorrow we are launching the community of practice on food system transformation in fragile settings for national conveners from countries affected by a food crisis, because this is really where we think that the setup of the coalition is better placed to mobilize the knowledge and the expertise and the experience that come from the work that we're doing at country level to generate discussions across the national conveners. Again, how do we strengthen and expand the partnership, and how do we make it more effective and coherent? So we have the usual suspect, the global network, the hub, but also the other coalition, IFIs, etc. And one of the last point that I think would be very interesting, at least for me to hear from fellow coalitions, would be beyond the UNFSS +4, how do we sustain this network of supports? All of us, I think, have mentioned issues around resources and funding in our survey. So what are the mechanisms through which we can continue to provide this support and sustain the level of support that we have provided in a constrained funding environment, particularly as we are engaging in processes that do take a long time to come to fruition, so that we don't end up having, to close shops in 3-4 years, whereas we are engaging in processes that are 5 to 10 years long. So I wanted to just leave you with this, because I would really like to hear also from colleagues on how they've been tackling with some of those issues. Thank you. Over from my side.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Emily. I think that Oliver and Emily brought to us very concrete examples of working on the ground, working with countries, providing support. And also, Emily, at the last slide, she made some very key questions. So how can the support to national pathways conveners be linked together among the coalitions? How this can be joint so as it's more effective? And how can a platform help strengthening partnerships among coalitions? I think that these two presentations show the importance of sharing, and we are sure that all coalitions present would have equally interesting presentations to make. And we will have a breakup rooms where we all have more time to share. And the hub will organize more interaction moments like as this for much more information sharing. But for the time being, we have 10 minutes for a quick discussion. And I would like then to call upon the School Meals Coalition for some insights on how to engage with governments along the same lines of what we hear now, how to engage with governments, to support them, linking up with other coalitions. So Emily Sidana, if you have the floor, like comments, like 2 minutes, 3 minutes comments, so as we have other coalitions as well.
Thank you, and very nice to join you. I joined the School Meals Coalition Secretariat a few months ago, so very interesting and useful for me to be in this discussion and learn from the work of the hub. The School Meal Coalition, as you know, has been growing constantly. Now we are at 97 countries, member countries. So big traction, and it's a coalition that is very much centered to what countries. We have a very light governance mechanism where we are co-chaired by France, Finland, and Brazil, which really helps have a very strong country focus, and we have a task force also that gives us the overall direction in our work. And the work with countries has always been very much at the center of our work. And if I can share here, I think a key instrument in that are the national commitments that our member countries do to the coalition regarding their long-term vision for school meals towards the goal of ensuring that every child has a meal in school by 2030. These national commitments are very powerful in the sense that they then set also a direction for the 127 partners that support the coalition in how they can support the countries achieving their vision and their national commitments. So really an anchoring point in a coalition that is more a network of networks than a top-down approach where the School Meal Coalition would be supporting countries directly. So national commitments are a key entry point for operationalization. The other one is that we work through 4 initiatives that have been established to address specific bottlenecks countries face in achieving their commitments. These are a research consortium on school health and nutrition that works around research and building the evidence, both at the global level, but also at the country level, and informing decision-making and strategies at the country level, but also supporting advocacy efforts for increased funding at the country level. The second initiative works around financing strategies for school meals, how countries can sustain their long-term strategies to scale up and improve their programs. So that's really important because the coalition is not a funding mechanism. The way we look into the funding gaps governments face in providing evidence and sharing experience and knowledge around the national funding strategies and costing strategies for school feeding. And we have 2 other initiatives, one that looks at data and monitoring and having a global database on school meals, where countries will find the information regarding the state of school feeding, but also school health and nutrition more broadly around the world. And a very last initiative that was launched last year at the first global forum of the School Meal Coalition in Paris around cities and how local governments, empowering local governments and cities to be able to manage and implement quality school feeding programs. The issue of food system transformation, climate change, and healthy diets is really at the core of the work of the coalition. It's at the core of the work of the coalition because we were launched at the Food System Summit, but also because we see through the national commitments that's at the core of their preoccupations and the issues they are grappling with. So certainly many entry points to support the countries, but I just would like to offer a question around, you were mentioning toolkits or an offer of the coalitions. From our perspective, because we work through those initiatives and a network of 120 more partners, the offer comes from all these partners, these initiatives. So it's not a discrete set of a toolkit, although those initiatives do have an offer to countries. But we also would need to think a bit beyond about the support we offer in connecting the dots, facilitating national dialogues. And I think that's where we have a big opportunity also to connect with the other coalitions here. So very much looking forward to this discussion.
Yeah. Thank you very much for your insights. And I think that we've seen 3 coalitions that have so much space for collaboration and to leverage their respective interests to support jointly countries here. And I think that's what this platform that the Hub can create to support you all can do and should do. So we have now time for one more coalition, and I don't see any hands, but if we have another coalition that wants to provide some insights before we go and break up rooms. I don't see any hands. So, and as I said, we
And
will
I
have
think
time.
if anybody wants to react to the survey or to offer concrete recommendations and suggestions about how we maintain engagement within this network, that is also welcome. Over to you, Denise.
Yeah. Well, we don't have.
Hello,
So, yeah,
Denise. I don't see the hand. Can I take the floor?
sure, go ahead.
Okay,
Please.
thank you. This is Florence from the Coalition for Healthy Data from Sustainable Food Systems. A quick reaction on country engagement. I will not describe all about the coalition. There is really a lot to say. Just that in the next period we had done a theory of change that had helped a lot our members to position and contribute on the coalition. And to just focus on the country engagement, on function 1, which is on aligning the policies and strategies to the food system pathways, and also for integrating nutrition and healthy diet in food system pathways, we are doing a mapping of countries that are willing to integrate a little bit more nutrition in their food system pathways, basically on demand of Francesco Branca, who is a member of the Secretariat, following a meeting he had in the European Commission, and with in mind that a lot of countries are in the process of reshaping their food system pathways. So connecting with the members is key to engage at country level. And actually, I wanted to say something regarding the difficulty for the food systems, either at a resident coordinator office or at food system convener office. Generally, the food system conveners are very high level, as well as the resident coordinators. These people are not technical people. They will not be in a position to read the technical guidance, etc., that all the ecosystem of support is drafting for them. What they need is a consolidated message from the people that are, let's say, below them and from their team. It's the case for resident coordinators, it is the case for food system conveners. So technical guidance has a very limited impact if we don't have a consolidated message at a level which is below these people. That's just what I wanted to say. Otherwise, over.
Thank you so much. So we have one hand, Samira, and then we will go for the breakout rooms. And I remind everyone that we will have more time for interaction in the breakout room. So Samira, and then over to Sylvia. Samira, please.
Thank you. But just very quickly, and I think that this might be something that the hub can help us with, because we have our countries, and first of all, I must say that our national conveners, I think they're excellent. They're very engaged. They like the work that we're doing, and they are very supportive. But what I think that they also expect from us as a coalition is to support them, to give them some concrete support. And this is where that if we don't have the funding, I know it comes back to the old nut, which is funding. If we don't have the funding, we cannot be in a position to compile a compendium of experts, which they want. We will not be able to fill that technical assistance. Capacity building, they would like some sort of support with that. So they're asking for some concrete help. And I don't know whether this is something that we can explore in detail and with the hub to see that, you know, they've developed their national pathways. They can have more support in going deeper into that. but they want to address these concrete areas. If they want to look at, and ours may be a little bit different. If they want to look at specific crops, they want some technical assistance with that. They want some technical assistance with policy, procurement policies, and data collection. How can they then collect data and address the SDGs or the indicators in the SDGs that they want to look at? So these are the concrete areas that we are finding out that our national conveners are looking for. And in fact, in our last steering group meeting, one of our steering group members said that, well, we asked for some things a long time ago and nothing has come of it. And we felt a little bit challenged to respond to that. So this is just an issue that I think that maybe we could have a deeper conversation with, and maybe with the hub. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your insights. I think that you touched on very important points. The survey has shown that the different coalitions have been receiving similar requests from countries for support. So that's another reason why we have to join our resources and work closely to provide joint support. So I hand it over to Sylvia that will now continue to the next session with the breakups groups. Sylvia.
Thank you very much, Denise, and thanks to all those who have made great presentations. Really shows that things have evolved quite a lot since 2021. There is a wealth of lessons learned, a wealth of experience also, and different models, because what we could see from the presentations from Emily and the two Emilys and Oliver is that your ways of operating are also different. And I think that is the good thing, because we all have different scale of resources. Countries have different needs, but it would be interesting to really capture the different models that have proven to be effective. And I think really what we are looking at now is to be as concrete as possible in our interactions, because as Samira was saying, in terms of keeping the trust and the credibility of national conveners, it is the speed at which we will be able to respond to requests that is also going to cement that trust in the ecosystem of support. And I think that's what I was saying to colleagues in my country team when I was RC, and it's the same thing here. We can be entry point to requests. Being an entry point doesn't make us the owner of the request, right? If I have received a request and I cannot answer that request appropriately, or if it can be better served by someone else, we should have the courage to take that request to others, or to call others, and to really mutualize the resources and the efforts, because more funding is not likely coming rushing towards us. But in the meantime, we have to do more, we have to do it faster. So how do we work smarter together? And I think, Samira, some of the things that you mentioned, for example, how do we beef up monitoring and data tracking capacity? This is something that is coming over and over again. At the Hub, we have started discussing with the Food System Countdown Initiative to see how can we create a coalition of the willing around this key area of monitoring and tracking. When coalitions are asking for some things that are extremely technical, we also know where to go for those things. But where we need to really look at, and Emily from the school meals was saying, we do our support through actors. So in a way, it is a little bit fragmented. These are the hard questions that we should ask ourselves. What am I committing to as an actor that is positioned in that ecosystem and offering support? Because by existing, that's what we are saying. But what is it that I can offer? Really have that lucid conversation and commit to be able to deliver those things, so that we know that, at the moment, maybe the role is global and it's advocacy oriented. But when we say that we are at the country level and we are offering things at the country level, we should exactly know what comes behind that. And I think once we have that clarity, having a gateway that works is going to be easier. So we'll come back to you on those, but definitely the Hub, very happy to play the role as a facilitator, as a broker. And for us, as Stefanos was saying at the beginning, it is really important that when we open those doors to conveners, we know that there will be something behind, which is why we've been very, very cautious with giving visibility to a gateway that would not be effective and operational at the beginning. Now, there will be more time to discuss, but we wanted to really devote some time to think about UNFSS +4. It's going to be soon upon us. And we know that with UNFSS +2, we have really raised the bar in terms of participation of the countries, participation of heads of states, having an agenda that was extremely dense. And it's always the struggle to balance the different things that we want to showcase. So the conversation that we want to start with you today is already to start thinking, and I'm asking you to go back to what were your thoughts when we ended UNFS +2? What are the things that for you were extremely important that were achieved that we absolutely have to make sure we retain for the next one, but what are the improvements that we can bring? How do we push towards saying countries have institutionalized things and are operationalizing the work? How do we start talking about impact, about transformation? How do we make sure that it's really a systems approach where we see ministers of climate, ministers of finance, ministers of education, ministers of health at the stocktake? And how do we all work together to bring them? One thing that was very interesting for me when I went to the global meeting of the School Means Coalition in Paris last year was their deep connection with the ministries of education and the ministries of social protection, for example. And some of you do have this engagement with different spaces. How do we mutualize all those things? And what really do we want the essence of UNFSS +4 to be? So we will send you into 4 breakout groups. You are randomly assigned to those breakout groups with 3 questions that are in the chat, but that the facilitators of your breakout groups are going to put in the chat there as well. So what does a successful UNFSS +4 would look like for you? And what do you think you can bring and contribute as a coalition to that effort? What concrete action can be taken to strengthen the collaboration with the coalitions ahead of UNFSS +4 in the preparations? And looking beyond 2025, how do you see the role of coalitions evolving from everything that we have heard today and from everything that we have learned over the years of doing this work that we know is hard work? So when you go into the breakout groups, the first thing that I would ask you to do is to identify your rapporteur so that this person can then come back with the key messages from your group that we will put together. This will also be shared back when we have the report of the survey. We will also include some of those key messages there so that we have this as a starting point. But really see this first meeting as a way of starting to create the path towards 2025 as a collective with the coalitions and really identify what is it that we are going to do together very concretely. So you see now the groups that have been created, where you're going to be. As I said, totally random. You have approximately 30 minutes, I think, within the groups, but we will also see when we are coming ready to come back in plenary. If it's before that, we will give you signal, but take the time that you need, and then looking forward to hearing back from the rapporteurs in each group at the end of the conversation time. So Stembani, are you the one sending us to the, wait, no, Stembani first. I have one more slide from you that I wanted you to show, which is the ideas that you all contributed already through the survey about the areas that you think are critical to be featured in the stock-taking moment conversation. Over to you, Stembani.
Thank you, Sylvia. So we asked a question during the survey, what are key issues that you would you think they need to be raised and discussed at the next talking moment. So the list that you see here are the list of the different proposed thematic areas or topics that you want to be discussed: food security and nutrition, climate change, environmental sustainability, equity and inclusion, economic aspects, governance and policy coherence, scaling and accelerating food systems transformation, implementation and concrete actions, data and monitoring, private sector engagement, health and food systems, regional and local perspective, support channels of engagement. As you can see, I think some of these were some of the points that were already emerging from you. So under each of these, you will have we have a specific example which coalition suggested this. For example, in the one I highlighted, you will know that the Aquatic Blue Coalition suggested the discussion how to further engage with the Rio Conventions and other UN arenas within the UNFSS process. And agroecology recommended focusing on food systems at the crossroads of climate, biodiversity, and land degradation agendas. Now, we could see from your suggestions that they were so much aligned to the work you already are doing in the coalition. But as a whole, Sylvia, these are the topics that emerged.
Thank you very much, Tembani. So we see here that it's a list of topics, right? But again, as I was saying, and looking at the lessons of UNFSS +2, we need to find the perfect balance between giving space to countries and come to tell their own story as they see it. We need to create the space to be able to talk about emerging issues that we consider central, at the same time not making it an panel expert discussion, right? So it's really finding this harmony in making it a stock take. We want to take stock of what's going on, having a true picture of where we stand. And one of the bullets of your proposal was the issue of scale, right? Transformation doesn't happen with pilot projects, with small activities. Transformation happens through scale. So how do we create a conversation that is really taking us in the direction of seeing transformation by 2030 and not just seeds of little things here and there? So enjoy the conversation in the little groups. Looking forward to hearing back from you in approximately, I would say, 25 minutes. Tembani, please send us into the groups. And Florence, sorry, you are in 2 groups. You don't need to clone yourself. We'll find a solution for that.
Okay, Francesca is still finding this. Let's give us a minute and see how we can.
Okay.
Tembani, I have been in discussion with Francesca, and there seems to be a bug somehow. So we are having some issues with these breakout rooms.
Can we not use the option where you are sending people randomly to breakout rooms without, and that it will split?
That's what we could do, but we can't find the option of even doing that in this. There's something wrong. So we are trying to solve it and see if it's possible to do this.
Okay, in the meantime, maybe let me also engage others in the question that Samira put there about requests for technical assistance and having the hub receive those from you and see how we can convene around those. I think this would be, the gateway is meant to become the mechanism for that once it will be up and running. But in the meantime, we would be very happy to have those conversations with you when you have requests that you cannot fully cover or for which you would like to call others to join. So yes, Samira, the answer to this is absolutely. And thinking that for me, technical assistance would always be best served by 2 or 3. More than that becomes a crowd, but I think having 2 or 3 of us bringing their value addition, depending on what it is that the convener has asked, can be a very good way also of reducing transaction costs for them. But this is something that we can try out and see how it works.
Okay, Sylvia, I have an update now from our support team, and they have activated the function. So in a minute or so, there should be the possibility of joining these breakout groups. But I think it will be done automatically, unfortunately, this time.
I think the mystery of the two Emilys is because probably Emily from HDP was counted twice. So now that is sorted out. So see you shortly, colleagues. Just flag if there's any technical issue, but there should be one of us in each of the rooms.
I would suggest that we take a short break and resume in a couple of minutes. So, and if it has not been solved, then we will need to find another solution. But I'm crossing my fingers that this will be solved in a few minutes.
Thank you, Mia. If it's not solved, we'll do it all together in the plenary. Let's see. So a couple of minutes technical break, and I hope the magic will operate in the meantime.
So Sylvia, I cannot see the function to actually split up in the breakout room. So I would suggest that at this stage we take it in a plenary session instead, to save time. Unfortunately, we will have to do with this option this time. It worked when we did the tests, but now it's not working, unfortunately.
That is fine. No problem, Mia. We'll do it here as a group. So inviting colleagues, you've seen the questions in the chat. Maybe we can copy paste them here again so that it's the latest thing in the chat. On the UNFSS +4, please do share thoughts. If you want to share reflections on UNFSS +2 as well, that's more welcome. Much welcome, sorry, but do think about what contributions coalitions will bring to these suggestions. So really in the suggestion, having also the seed of the solution in there. The floor is open. Any reflections from colleagues on what we would like UNFSS +4 to be, based also on some of the strategies that you have developed, on the priorities, what you're hearing from your member countries? Oliver.
Just to break the ice. No, I think one of the things when the Food Systems Summit was carried out in 2021, and then later on with StockTech in 2 years later, we've always positioned the coalitions as also like a game changer in solutions. And in the survey today, it was mentioned that there are about 12 or 13 out of 29 coalitions have responded to the survey. So I was just thinking maybe it would be good to also take stock of, because we are coalitions, in terms of where these 29 coalitions, and give some examples in terms of what has been carried out, what was the trajectory of some of those coalitions, and also to have, as what we're doing now, some sort of like a sharing of experiences and concrete cases on what has been implemented at the in-country level. I think that would be interesting, and I mean, donors and other stakeholders would be keen to see, what has happened to this coalition, because that is always a temptation, and that's always the case for every summit, for every event. There's always new initiatives that come out, and then after that we forget about them. So I think it would be good to take stock of those 29 or so coalitions, where they are now, just to have a sense of the trajectory of their evolution. Over.
Thank you very much, Oliver. And that's what we're trying to do now. And actually, if you look at the numbers, I think we had 31 plus coalitions emerging from the summit. When we did the first survey in 2022, which led to the compendium, which initially was a paper document and then became an online compendium, digital one, I think it had dropped to 27. If we're looking at the numbers of those who responded to the survey for the section on coalitions in the Secretary General report for UNFSS +2, because as you rightly said, a lot of member states were asking us, what came out of all of this? Was it worthwhile? Are they alive and kicking? I think it was around 13, and today we had 11. And I think we are around 12 online. So is that an indication of those who really have a backbone and that are doing things? Is that more or less the critical mass that we can count on? I'm beginning to feel like the number is quite consistent across different surveys and different things. What we have to check if it's, if you had maybe a few that were in the other one and are not here, I think we still maybe around 15. That's kind of half from 31 at the end of the summit. So there is the importance of taking stock of what has happened with this new layer in the food systems global architecture, and definitely do tell a story that would be a cohesive narrative, something that we collectively own, and then a renewed impetus for the future of coalitions, how we see them, how do we also make sure that, you don't have some that are completely resourced and some that are struggling and maybe don't really can operate. What is the message also that comes out of that member states are not supporting some coalitions? I think this is a reflection for all of us, really.
Totally.
Thank you, Oliver. Anybody else?
I have another one, but just letting others,
let's get this going until everybody is hot and ready.
No, during the FSS +2, we received this sort of like a framework on the function of the coalitions, right? There is that networking function, local to global, fostering alignment and coherence, catalyzing coordinated investment and action, mobilizing resources, etc. So I was wondering whether, that framework is still being used by the hub. And I think that would be, if that is the case, then I think that would be an interesting framework to use as we try to self-reflect as coalitions, whether we are indeed performing our role as coalitions the way it is envisioned when it was conceived. So it gives us a sort of like, how do we benchmark ourselves? How do we look ourselves? What are the areas which we could, work together? What examples we can give for each of these functions? So I think if we have that sort of like a common framework on how we take stock of the progress made by different coalitions, I think that would be useful, and it facilitates the understanding from the different stakeholders of the hub. How do they read this evolution and trajectory of different coalitions? And if we could use the same sort of like a framework, plus 6, plus 8, plus 10, so we're building on a common sort of like a narrative, and it becomes easier to track increments of successes and experiences.
Thank you very much, Oliver. I would say that those functions were our own effort to try and create a structure to make it a little bit easy so that we were not counting apples and oranges. They're not really something that is cast in stone. So we could actually even come together. And I think from the analysis, because I pressed Tambani today, he had made a super detailed presentation for you, and I told him to reduce this to 15 minutes. But there's a lot that him and Mia has analyzed out of the survey. So I think when they send the report out, this could be also a way of further refining what we see as being where the coalitions are really bringing value addition, and maybe creating, if we all agree, some key functions out of that. This has to be a collective agreement. I think when we are crafting this story, we have to be very specific, because if I remember correctly, when putting all the results together from the SG report, we were saying that coalitions have been operating in 100 countries. But is that really the case? I mean, what are we saying when we say that, right? So this was okay for UNFS +2, but in UNFS +4, when we are saying the story of coalitions, we really want to be concrete. And if we're looking at the survey and we see that some continue to say we struggle with national conveners for access, for deeper engagement, let us really try together to fix those things. And to really think about, it's not in the numbers, but maybe it's in the quality, and that we don't all have to operate against the same model, but what we do has to push and advance the national pathways. If it's not pushing the implementation of the national pathways, then maybe it's advocacy, and that's great, but at the country level, we need to be much more intentional about reporting our progress. And then maybe one additional area to frame also our thinking are those areas that the Secretary General put forward in the call to action, which was the policy coherence and making sure that national pathways are mainstreamed in the national development plans. The governance, do we have the multi-stakeholder, multi-sectorial platforms in the countries that are driving a systems agenda? We know that more than 80% of our national conveners come from the agri sector. How do we help them become systems leaders? Third is about the science, and is the science policy interface, are we leveraging that as coalitions and as actors in the work that we do? Or is it disconnected? Even when we come in, we don't operate from a systems way and an evidence-based. Fourth is the stakeholders. Are they just consulted when we do dialogues and then we drop them from implementation? How do we support that when we go? Do we bring them? Do we create space for them and give them a seat at the table? And then, of course, the private sector engagement. Is there the accountability that we would like to see? Actually, tomorrow we have a solutions dialogue with the national conveners on private sector accountability. Should be a very interesting conversation. And the Global Compact has become an important actor in this conversation, which is also connecting this agenda with other multilateral processes. And then last, but of course not least, is the financing. And the work that IFAD and the World Bank are leading on 3FS. So this is also one framework through which we can analyze what we are doing and see if we are pushing these elements in our strategies. And now I see that you guys are ready to come in. So I have Tiago first, then Emily from School Meals, and then Emily from HTP. Over to you, Tiago.
Thank you, Sylvia, and hello, colleagues. It's really great to see some familiar faces and also some people that I haven't had the pleasure to meet yet. But I actually do have two questions or suggestions. First one kind of builds on Oliver's remark, which is regarding the number of coalitions that we currently have. I've been wondering whether it would be also interesting for us to really understand what happened to those coalitions and try to learn from them as well. It seems to me that we often forget the importance of learning from failures or for experience that didn't really go as we intended. And my understanding that it might not be here because they were not able to really reach the objectives that they originally had. So maybe I think it would be really interesting to hear from them, to listen from them, and understand what went wrong throughout the time that they managed to be active. So that was my first question / suggestions. The second one is, because one of the biggest challenges that we've been facing in this social protection coalition is really reaching out to governments through their national conveners so they start engaging with the coalition. So I was wondering whether for the next event for the UNFSS +4, we could also try to have a session dedicated to matchmaking. Not sure what the format would be, but one that would bring together governments interested in learning more from specific coalitions so they could start this matchmaking process, so they could start this to really get to know each other and eventually start working more closer together. So these are my two questions / suggestions. Thank you. Over.
Thank you, Tiago. Well, maybe we take, oh, I see now we have 3 more. So maybe we do one round by taking questions from Emily, the 2 Emilys and Sylvia, and really answers should come from the whole group, right? We are doing what we were supposed to do in the breakout, so do feel free to respond to each other as well. Over to you, Emily.
Thank you, Sylvia. So one is more a contribution and then a question in terms of what we can expect from the UNFSS +4. I see the comment from Florence Tonoir in the chat. I also believe that it would be more inspiring and relevant to focus on the advancement and progress more than on coordination and the coalitions themselves, how they connect and how they can support. Each coalition has different objectives, and I think from the School Meal Coalition, we would like to show progress against the objectives that the members of the coalition have set for themselves, and we will have very interesting new data at that point in time. So perhaps that can also link to, I saw some suggestions to have a focus on data and knowledge, so that could be a nice link into that. Something, as you mentioned, we can bring as well is multi-sectoral collaboration and the role of the education sector in particular in those discussions. But certainly, bottom line, I think we would like to put more the focus on what countries are achieving and the progress at the country level and the new commitments, the new achievements of countries rather than the work of the coalition as a setup. And there's quite remarkable progress and commitments from national governments that we could share and perhaps link to the work of all the agendas that other coalitions are driven. Tiago's comment on matchmaking, I wonder, one of the things perhaps I can see as a challenge is that perhaps, and clearly that's the case of the coalition, we walk through the focal points of the coalition at the country level. We have focal points in each country, with which we have not with all of them, of course, but with many of them, we have regular interactions, and that's how we work with countries, which means we are less connected to the national conveners. So indeed, this matchmaking or being able to speak to the work of the coalition with the national conveners is perhaps something that could bring value, and on that I would welcome your thoughts. But wondering if that should be done ahead of the stock taking moment rather than at the stock taking moment, in the sense that it's perhaps more of a technical discussion. But I like this idea because, at least from my side, being relatively new to this piece of work, I have to say that I don't work with the national conveners, and we don't have that link. We work through the national focal points of the school meal coalition, who then have the link or don't have the link to the national conveners. That's more how this operates. So certainly something we could explore. And my final question is about the report of the survey. We responded to the survey, but not comprehensively. And in particular regarding country work, it's quite a detailed set of questions that were sent, and it will take some time to gather this information from country focal points. So wondering what's the timeline for the report and how you are planning to use it. Is this a public document? And sorry if that have been shared at the beginning of this meeting. I joined a few minutes late, but perhaps a quick recap on this report and how you are planning to finalize it so that we make sure you get the inputs in due course. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emily. I don't want to respond to questions now, but I do want to clear a misunderstanding so that we don't continue with it. So the point that Oliver and I were making about having a strong narrative about the coalitions is not having a strong narrative about the coalitions as something operating in vacuum for the stock take. Member states do want to know what has happened with the coalitions. They do want to know if this is something that has worked, because it came out as a direct outcome of the summit. So they will expect us again, the same way they expected in 2023, to be able to say something. So we had it in the SG report, and we had a specific session dedicated to this. It is important that we have this reflection on it, but certainly not to put the work of the coalitions in front of the work of the member states, but there will be space for that, and it is important that we realize that. So it's not either or, and the work of the coalition is this compared to the overall conversation, but we should able to have a narrative that is coherent and that is thought through in terms of how have we supported global, regional, and country level follow-up of the summit. So wanted to clarify that so that we don't go with the impression that we want to feature coalitions in a vacuum in the stock take. So we have Emily and then Sylvia, and then we can come back to all the different points that you have all proposed so far. Thank you. Emily.
Thanks a lot. So, I mean, I think my comments are going to build on what has been done before in terms of the what has been said before, in terms of how we should be telling the stories. And I think the coalitions were always designed as a means to an end, and as a means to support the food system pathways. And to me, I think I would see it as a success for the coalition if the national conveners tell the story that they are feeling supported, because I think there's a little bit of a different perspective between what the effort of that we are putting in this work and how the national conveners see it. And so, like for the coalition, for the HDP coalition, our objective by 2025 is really to have demonstrated or not that the way that the coalition is structured is actually a working model. And if it's not, I mean, I think, like Thiago said, it's also an important learning for us. But in terms of how to feature it in the UNFSS +4, I think this story should be coming from the national conveners. They should be the one telling how the ecosystem of support has supported them or not, and the extent to which it was coordinated or not. I think this is very important that they have this voice, because obviously, I mean, we are not completely, we're putting so much effort into this. Obviously, we're not completely objective in terms of what the impact actually is. So to me, that would be a very important lens to put into the UNFSS. The other point that I wanted to raise was more, perhaps less connected to the UNFSS, but more in terms of like the kind of actors that perhaps we need to give more visibility to at the UNFSS. And in all the missions that we've done as part of the partnership between the global network and the coalition and the hub, the role of the RC office has been essential. Like there's no scenarios under which the coalitions can provide the concrete support that Samira was talking about. Carrying out the financing flow analysis, carrying out the policy analysis. There are technical agencies for it. There are also the UNSDCF. There are lots of mechanisms that are existing at country level. So how do we bring coherence between the request of the national conveners and those tools that the UN has is very important. The message that we get every time is that the RCOs are stretched and they don't necessarily have the capacity. So how do we raise the potential and the visibility of the UN country teams as a mechanism for delivery through the UNFSS? I think that would be critical, because I think a lot of the resources should be going to the in-country actors rather than to coalitions or to more global actors. I mean, that's perhaps shooting myself in the foot, but that's the perspective I would like to see a little bit more in the UNFSS. Over.
Thank you, Emily. And I think if I understood correctly, that you have started trying to place people in the RCOs. You want to say a couple of words about this? You mentioned it earlier, but maybe for all, I think it's quite interesting.
Yeah, so very briefly, I mean, I was just sitting in the interview panel this morning, but we are recruiting a food system coordinator for the RCO in Mogadishu. And this is really after discussions with the RC office and following the mission, the scoping mission and the planning mission that we did. That the RC understands the importance of food systems as an accelerator of progress in the context of Somalia, but doesn't have the bandwidth. I mean, it's really like a question of capacity, like technically strong warm bodies in the office. So the global network made these investments and they are going to be paying for a person to be deployed, a senior consultant to be deployed there for a year, I think. And ideally, we would have wanted this person to be placed in the national council with the government, but for security reasons, it's extremely complicated to second people that would be working outside of the green zone. I won't bore you with the details. So the second best scenario was to place that person in the RC office. And the role of that person is essentially going to be to focus the energy of the UN country team to move forward their contribution to the food system pathways in Somalia. Over.
Thank you very much, Emily. And I think this is really important. I couldn't agree with you more about supporting coordination. We're actually doing something similar in Kenya. So we are cost sharing a person, the hub, and the RC, the resident coordinator in Kenya. So we're covering the cost. The person is contracted by FAO and placed within the national convener's office within government itself. It makes a huge difference in terms of having someone to really support the curator and the national convener. And I think whenever we can, really strengthening coordination capacity and increasing the teams of national conveners is the way to go. So that's something that I would encourage others to try out as well. So we have more hands. We have Sylvia, Florence, Samira, and Katiela. And I would recommend that we take 10 more minutes for this round of suggestions and recommendations. Sylvia, over to you.
Thank you, Sylvia. Okay, first of all, I'm Sylvia. I'm here representing the Gender Coalition.
Sorry, Sylvia, I don't know if I'm the only one, but I have an echo coming from you. Is there another mic open that would create this, or do you have two windows for the Zoom open?
No, I only have one and I only have one mic. Do you still hear the echo?
Yeah.
Yes, we still hear the echo.
Can you try to speak again, Sylvia? Otherwise, I will take Florence to give you time to see if maybe you disconnect and reconnect to see.
Sorry, do you hear better now?
Much better. Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, I connected my headphones. Sorry for that. No, just very quickly. So from the Gender Coalition, and I will mention this because I would like to understand if this was also the situation for other coalitions. Ever since from the beginning, from the first Food Systems Summit, we even faced some type of backlash, or not backlash, but rejection from some conveners when we invited them to join our coalition. And we know that it's a very sensitive topic and it's not necessarily always mainstreamed, or not as it should, right? So we ended up working a lot, and we have advanced a lot, but we ended up working a lot with colleagues in the ministries. But it's been very, very hard to work with national conveners in this sense. And even sometimes at the beginning, we did a whole analysis of how much, for instance, national pathways included gender. And for countries that had an excellent inclusion of gender, the national conveners were not interested at all in joining our coalition. And that was a bit of a surprise. And also it seemed like there is kind of a disconnection between these national conveners and our colleagues in the ministries. Like, I don't know, sometimes maybe a national convener might be the vice minister in the agricultural ministry, but sometimes if it's not like that, if that's not the case, then it's kind of hard to get that connection and to get them involved. Then, for instance, in the stock-taking moment, this very same topic, gender, was not really very present. It was a bit weak. And then now in the dialogues that are being organized by the hub leading up to the next stock-taking moment, gender yet again is quite, it's not very represented. So the first thing that we would like to understand, is there any scope for us to contribute to this in terms of content? And if yes, we would be more than happy to do so. And then also, we would also like to understand, for instance, how to work with the clusters, because we haven't done that. We know that our topic is very, very easy to mainstream, is very cross-cutting. So not only we would like to mainstream across other coalitions, but we would also like to do that across clusters, across events, across dialogues, across national conveners, countries. And I think our topic allows for that. But for sure, we need some support from the hub. Very recently, for instance, we organized a dialogue. We wanted to invite national conveners to join the conversation, and we didn't manage to. So in the end, it ended up being colleagues from the ministries. And yeah, it would be really good to have the hub maybe helping us deliver this message and making clear that everyone acknowledges the importance of this topic, so that we don't face this type of rejection now. Thank you very much, and over.
Thank you, Sylvia. Just for clarity, when you say colleagues from the ministry or ministries, what ministries do you mean?
Ministries of Agriculture, Rural Development, Livestock, Fisheries.
Okay, okay. So I'll come back. I don't want to take the time from our two speakers, but I'll come back and definitely answer on this. Thank you. Florence?
Thank you. I have 2 points that are not related. For the first one, I will take my UN nutrition hat and I will remove the coalition hat. Regarding the point raised by Emily about hosting the food systems at the residence coordinator office, this is great, and this is a huge effort that can avoid duplication, competition as well between agencies. So this is great, but at UN nutrition level, at country level, we are really working on a case-by-case basis. And sometimes the ORC is not a proper office to host that. Sometimes there is a choice for other agencies, and that goes fine. So it's really a case-by-case basis. Generally, it works much better at ORC office, but sometimes the RC doesn't want. So it can really change according to the positioning of the food system convener and also the sensibility of the RC about food systems and nutrition in general. Second point, just a question here on the UNFSS +4. To add up on my point for taking stock of on the advancement of the food system pathways,
I recall that the countries have made commitments on the same model of the N4G commitment of Tokyo. I'm wondering whether these are the food system pathways themselves or if they are distinct from the food system pathways. But a relevant stop date would be, for example, to showcase the contribution of the coalitions to the meeting those commitments from the countries. But this is more a question because I'm not clear about the commitment that were made after the summit of 21. Over, thank you.
Thank you, Florence. Samira?
Just very quickly, I was just thinking that, you know, apart from, as has been mentioned before, that the coalitions can have an opportunity to showcase or showcase results of what has been done. The other thing that I noticed of the summit itself was the multi-stakeholder involvement. And then maybe, you know, there are the people also who will measure success. So maybe we could go back to that sort of format, because I didn't see that in the +2. I mean, maybe not in as big a way as the summit process, but a kind of taking the pulse of the different stakeholders. You know, we engage with youth, with young people, we engage with women's groups, indigenous people. So maybe have those multi-stakeholder platforms for people to say, how are we doing from the UNFSS process, and how are you getting on in the country? How involved are you, and what would you like to see more of? With regard to the in-country areas, when we had a scoping mission to one of our countries, we thought that it would work with having a multi-agency approach. But I don't think that was working very well. I don't think it's worked very well, because I think different agencies have different focuses, different competencies as well. And I came away thinking that, you know, I'm from WFP, but I came away thinking that the areas that the country, the national convener and the stakeholders they had mobilized, we had a very good mission, a roundtable identification of their priorities, what it is that they wanted. I felt that our own agency was not at the level to support the country. And we engaged with also FAO, and I felt that, you know, there was a little bit of disconnect. So I don't know how we can work that, whether maybe it would be the RC that we need to bring on board to maybe work with the different agencies. But I felt that there was a disconnect between what we were hearing from the national convener and the stakeholders that they had provided for us around the table to identify what their priorities are, and what the UN agencies can do to support. That was just that disconnect that I noticed.
Thank you, Samira. Katiela, you had a hand up.
Yes, thank you very much, Sylvia. Yeah, I've been a bit quiet, but I really want to echo what Samira said and maybe confirm the role of RCOs at the country level. Because when it comes to multi-agency alliance or coalitions, you know, the implementation modalities can really fit into the global cooperation framework, because UN agencies doesn't have enough flexibility to act out of the cooperation framework. And the question is how we can use the food system as a sixth transition to fast track the SDGs. This is what is quite interesting, the RCs. So how to show it? Because the coalitions is something like a pool of expertise to track or address a question that has been raised into through the action tracks during the preparation of the UNFSS. And if you see the 30+ coalitions around, they just, encompass, this kind of technicality, this kind of expertise, skills around the teams that are really transforming food system. And to it being that, we should really show to the RCs that we can bring something to the global cooperation framework, so that we can really feed the country pathways to implement the food system transformation. This is the only way, as UN agencies, I see you can act in terms of implementation modalities. Otherwise, it will be, something like a crowding, the conveners, and, without having any, perspective in addressing strictly the food system. Because when we really, the coalitions and alliance are not led by only UN agencies. There are many, many NGOs, any other constituencies again. So we as UN agencies, I don't see us, as Samira say, maybe having this flexibility to do otherwise than in the cooperation framework, and how we can really embed this food system transformation into the coalition framework. This is a key question. And I think for the couple of country frameworks that I'm really following, we make sure that this food system transformation is in the framework. So it is very easy to have this, been implemented through the coalitions, through the UN agencies, through the cooperation framework, and be sure that the country conveners are aware of this kind of connection. Over.
Thank you very much, Katiela. I think in this last segment, we have really gone quite deep into the mechanics of how things work at the country level. And this is the kind of conversations that we need to have to really drill down into implementation and what are the challenges, but also what are the opportunities, and looking from the RC's perspective. But let me not take too much time here. I think we have 1 minute to go. Stefanos will kindly provide closing remarks, but just to highlight that we have said a lot about really learning from what has been the story of coalitions so far, including those that have not been operating as planned, and really looking and trying to draw some lessons from there. Those who are super strong, and I don't want to name names, but we do know that some coalitions are operating very well, and those that are maybe struggling a little or that has been inactive for a while, and try to think about what is the value proposition for coalitions after 2025. Second has been national conveners and challenges that we may have with them, or with working outside of their direct engagement. We've heard from, I think it was Emily, that they're working with focal points on school meals, but not necessarily with the national conveners. We've heard from Sylvia that national conveners may not be interested in the gender work, which is quite surprising, but I mean, not entirely unexpected either. We had a consultation last year, Sylvia, if you remember. We had a solution dialogue exclusively on gender that we organized with the coalition, and we brought all the national conveners really to push that advocacy for gender there. But we can continue to have some activities, and of course we can't have gender-only thematic meetings all the time, but we would welcome your engagement in planning those that are already scheduled. So thank you for that offer. Very happy to take you on board, and really encouraging all. If you are trying to do some activities in the country and the national convener is not there, that should be a concern. And how do we strategize and use actors that have this access so that we work towards it? And around the national conveners, you have teams. You often have curators, because when the national convener is the minister, that should not be the target in the initial step, but how do we work with the teams? So if we want to ground our activities in the national pathways, the national conveners have to be involved in what we do. Otherwise, there is no way they will come to stock taking +4, as Emily was saying, and telling a good story. So, and beyond that, anchoring in the national pathways and empowering the national pathways comes through working with national conveners. So when we are not doing this, please, let's strategize together to fix that. Resident coordinators, extremely important. How do we enhance coordination through them? And how also do we make sure that we send the right signals? And here I'm talking about the UN agencies to our country representatives. As a resident coordinator, if you don't have a UNCT that is solid behind you on one of the transitions, you will focus on the other transitions, right? So if we want food system to be a priority for resident coordinators, they need to feel that their UN country team is willing and ready behind them on this. And this goes through the headquarters, also sending the messaging to their country directors and making sure that we have food system in the cooperation framework, as Katiela was saying, and that when you go to a country to do the work, you connect with the cooperation framework. You don't do it in parallel. This is how all this work is going to be one work and not a multiplicity of disjointed activities. I think that is extremely important. The reports, I will check with Tembani, we will send a message. We want to give you maybe a little bit more time so that you can polish your answers so that we can have a solid report. I don't know under which form it will be published, maybe not massively published, but for us, as a reference of where we stand and the things that we want to accomplish together, the report is important. So if you need one more week to go back to your answers and complete, we are more than willing to do so. But let's take it as a working document that is going to guide the engagement strategy and the work plan, mini work plan with coalitions that Mia is going to work on. So with that, I'm handing over to Stefanos for what has been really a great discussion. I'm looking forward to more of those. Stefanos, over to you.
Sylvia, thank you very much. Indeed, it was a great discussion. And thank you very much for summarizing this dialogue that we have here. I don't want to add a lot of things, just 3 points. One is the need to come together around the food system national pathways. And I know that all of us, we want to support this. What we need to do is to operationalize this right now, because we get a lot of requests, we get a lot of interest. We listen many people to ask how the hub is working with the coalitions. Let's go for this operationalization with additional survey. And, you know, we need to be ambitious at the level of quality and not the level of quantity. So let's identify a few things that can really make a change, and we can present them in the next stock-taking moment. So it's not about ticking boxes here and showcasing, you know, that we have, I don't know how many active coalitions right now. I think you are 13 here, and we have 13 different deliverables. Let's do something that it will showcase how we work all together. My second point is what the number I mentioned. I mean, we knew we have 29 coalitions, and we have 13 today in this meeting. I do understand some people could not really join. There's calendar conflicts sometimes. But at some point, we will need also to establish a good status if some coalitions have decided that they don't want to continue. And on this, we will need also your support to get more links with the people that they are not here today, because we understand that you have links. My third point will be to try to intensify our engagement with more of these meetings, but always with a specific purpose. So today, I think it was a very nice kickoff after the stock-taking moment, going to the next one. I think in the course of the next 12 months, we will need to meet at least 3 times more, but each time we will need to have some specific thing to talk about. So we need to inform our future meetings with some work that we do offline, with the surveys, with documents that they can go back and forth. But let's every time step it one level up and try to have more and more ambition. Let's do it something like the NDCs, you know. We have an idea, and then the next 3 months we make it more ambitious, and so on and so on. So I'm very sure that there's going to be a very good work between all of you and the colleagues in the hub. And Sylvia said, you know, Mia is taking over now relation with coalitions. Tembani is here to support also the knowledge management element that we want behind this thing, because there's a lot of knowledge management element. They will reach out to you many times. I'm looking forward to continue working and to create something good. Not just for the stock taking. It's not to create something that we can say to the stock taking, here we have a good session or a good side events. It's to create value for the national conveners and our member countries. Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.